This is a map of all the bike paths in Amsterdam. Stretching 550 kilometers or 320 miles, these paths give people on a bike the shortest and most direct routes throughout the city. But if you're driving a car instead of riding a bike, you might have to take a separate and much longer route to your destination, which could give you an impression that in Amsterdam, cars are actively excluded from the streets and driving here must be a bummer. But this cannot be further from the truth, as this study, which collected data from 50 million users across 32 countries, clearly shows that Dutch car owners have a better driving experience than any other country in the world. Despite the fact that the Netherlands is the most densely populated of the bunch, and if that was not enough, there is Amsterdam's impressive public transportation network, which includes trains, buses, metros, trams, and ferries to help people move around the capital, making it one of the most livable cities in the world. It seems that the Dutch have cracked the code for building a perfect city. But what's even crazier is that this almost didn't happen. And Amsterdam, the city of bikes as we know it today, was almost ripped to shreds in the name of progress and the so-called modernization, especially to make room for cars 60 years ago, when the economy of the Netherlands took off due to the post-war boom. And from 1948 to 1972, the average income in a Dutch household went up by more than 200%. People had more money to spend, and soon enough the streets were flooded with cars. It's hard to believe that in 1963, Amsterdam's alderman for urban planning and the future Dutch Prime Minister Joop den Uyl argued that it should be a democratic right for everyone to have their own automobile. However, there was an issue. Amsterdam was not built for cars, and to make room for cars, something needed to change. So they looked to America for inspiration and hired David Jokinen, an American engineer who proposed a solution for Amsterdam's car problem, titled Plan Jokinen, in which he presumed that just like pretty much all the cities in the US, people would choose to live in the suburbs and drive to work downtown. And since Amsterdam was more dense than any city in the US, making way for the car meant demolishing everything that was on its way, including these beautiful canals, which were going to be filled in to make room for an inner-city superhighway, leading to office buildings and car parks, which would have completely turned the city upside down. But not all the city planners were on board with this radical transformation and rejected his plan, saying it was old-fashioned, and thank God for that. But the one thing they could not stop was the growing popularity of cars. While in 1960, 1 out of 23 Dutch people owned a car. By 1970, this number went up to 1 out of 5. A lot of neighborhoods were bulldozed to make room for highways and parking spaces. And what happened next was not all that surprising, because with more cars on the roads, accidents began to spike, and in true Dutch fashion, people took to the streets to protest, demanding car-free neighborhoods. With time, they raised awareness and the authorities had to pay attention. The changes began with car-free Sundays, then car-free city centers, and eventually led to bike paths and bike lanes all over the city that we see today. But what's interesting, and I didn't know this, but there are some smaller cities in the Netherlands, like Utrecht, that do better than Amsterdam in terms of biking infrastructure. But Amsterdam is the city that puts the Dutch on the map, and it outranks megacities like New York, London, or Los Angeles when it comes to public transport and efficient design. Let's take Los Angeles for example, which is a city built around cars, but announced an ambitious 1,684-mile bikeway project, which, according to them, will be built in addition to the existing 334 miles of bike paths laid out over the past 30 years, which is roughly 10 miles of construction per year. But even if we ignore the absurd speed of construction, it turns out in LA, paint also counts as infrastructure. I'm not making this up. This is what it says on the brochure. All you need is a guy on a bike, stencil, some stop signs, and voila. You now have a new bike lane, which by the way can abruptly spit cyclists into traffic, and even when the bike lanes are separated from the road, they sometimes look like this, which honestly looks terrifying to me. And what's remarkable is that this photo is selected by the LA City Council as an example of their futuristic vision, which is supposed to make biking in LA more enticing. What they fail to understand is that even an exceptional piece of biking infrastructure is almost entirely useless on its own if it's not connected to all destinations. And if you look at Amsterdam, These bike paths go everywhere, to all neighborhoods, schools, offices, shops, hospitals, and even to other cities. And compared to LA, Amsterdam's infrastructure looks like some alien technology beyond our comprehension that's available exclusively to the Dutch. And what really makes Amsterdam so well designed is that it's built not around cars or even bikes, but around people, as our cities should be. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.